between majority and minority rights. There's certain things that the majority cannot do. And it's up to the Supreme Court to define the meaning of the Constitution to put limits on what a majority can do. And that's the basic answer that you give. Yes?
In Europe, they have mixed restrooms, so what, I don't understand why that would be such an issue. I don't.
It is an issue only because we have sex-segregated restrooms. Picture, as some places do, where you simply have unisex. Here's just a series of, you go into a cabin, you perform it in private. See, what troubles me is here are constitutional issues that we debate about how and where people perform bodily functions. I understand that MSU apparently has unisex. There was a story about that in either the New York Times or one of the local papers. But again, the answer, as long as we have sex-segregated restrooms, people use the restroom that corresponds to their gender. So as I put, women standing in a long line cannot say, I have a right to use the men's restroom. They don't. I think that will disarm the critics. Yes?
Do you imagine that it'll take a while for our military to accept these changes, especially with the uniform for the UCMJ? Like, you know, it still has a lot of laws in place that are against these changes, you know, like the prevention of, you know, it's illegal to have anal sex or...
Having what, I'm sorry?
It's illegal to have anal sex in the UCMJ for the military. Do you imagine it'll take a long time for the military to accept these changes?
No, actually, it's easier for the military because of the command structure. They're not going to prosecute anybody for having anal sex because the decision I referred to, Lawrence versus Texas, said people have a right to have sex any way they want, including anal sex. You know, when I do my talks about marriage, I usually talk about intimacy, unless I'm speaking to a conservative group like I did at Ave Maria Law School, and I want to be graphic. But what I pointed out, this is about marriage. You know, you take a typical marriage, you get up couple gets up in the morning, they take care of children. If they have them, they go to work, they share life's good times, they share life's problems. All too often they break up. If there's any difference at all between a same-sex couple and an opposite-sex couple, it is, quote, how they typically make love. And I use the term typically because opposite-sex couples can make love the same way. No, I think the military, this is interesting. Back in 1948, President Truman issued an order integrating the military. In World War II, we fought with segregated units. These were black units, Asian units, those Asians who weren't interred, with white officers and a few black officers. It wasn't until 1948 that we integrated the military. There's going to be all kinds of problems. There weren't because of the command structure. You might not, if you're a white guy, you might not like having to serve under a black officer, but you did. It's the same thing, you know, while some of the military resisted, the president as commander-in-chief says do it. Also, there's another big difference. It's an age difference. When you see the changing polls about support for marriage for same-sex persons, why do we find such a high level of support? It's because there are more younger people and fewer older people. Younger people have grown up with gay and lesbian. It's no big deal. They have gay and lesbian friends. They go on the same sports and so forth. It's the older generation that has the problems with it. I try to find out why. Why do you think that older generations, let's say 50 and up, something like that, have a problem with it? The best that I could find in discussing it with my conservative friends is a fear that their own children are going to become gay and lesbian. That's why it is very important for them to believe it's a matter of choice and not a matter of orientation. And so if they have a view, if we make the world unpleasant enough, my own children won't choose to be gay or lesbian. But it's a generational thing, and it is fading. So that's why I'm not that worried about opposition, and I'm going to be very candid about it politically. Do you follow the difference between the electorate in presidential years and off years? In the last election, nationwide, of the eligible people to vote, 36% voted. In 2010, about 40%. Who are the people who vote? They tend to be older, whiter, and more affluent. In the presidential year of 2012, 60% of the eligible voters voted. Who votes in presidential years that don't vote in off years? They're more likely to be younger, people of color, less affluent. This is why the Republicans do so much better in off years and why the Democrats have been doing better in presidential elections. So this is going to be, if we get enough signatures, this will be on the Michigan ballot in 2016, which is a presidential year when a lot more young people, minorities, less affluent will come out and vote. Further questions?
Is there a legal distinction between the terms sex or gender? Is there a difference?
That's a very, very good question. My students ask that, and I answer it this way. As used in the laws, no. I mean, basically the terms, the legal term going back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was sex, referring to men and women. We used gender to draw this as a more modern term because the reason it is a broader meaning, sometimes the word sex is understood to mean physical and biological differences between men and women, especially the capacity of women to become pregnant. When it comes to physical and biological distinctions, the Supreme Court has upheld some of those, such as the law punishing teen males for underage sex and not teen females, or drawing a distinction between children born out of wedlock abroad who are claiming citizenship through an American citizen mother and those who are claiming through an American citizen father. But distinctions, the more typical distinctions between men and women have generally been struck down. So I would say that when used in legal documents, they should be treated as interchangeable. And in the meantime, I have to tell you a story about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It was pretty surprising in 1964 for Congress to prohibit employment discrimination on the basis of sex, because women weren't supposed to be working outside the home once they got married. How did it happen that in 1964 the Civil Rights Act included a prohibition of discrimination on the basis of sex? The Southerners, who at that time were Democrats, were trying to block Title VII. They're trying to block the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The House Republicans, led by, the House Democrats, led by Representative Smith of Virginia, Howard Smith, who was the head of the Rules Committee, proposed an amendment prohibiting employment discrimination on the basis of sex, figuring that would be a killer amendment, because if Title VII prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex, you couldn't get a majority to vote for it, or 67 votes in the Senate to kill the filibuster. And the liberal Democrats were opposing that, including sex, because they knew what the motive was. Anyhow, the amendment passed, but the act did pass, and so that's why, as of 1965, we have prohibited discrimination in employment on the basis of sex. That was not some liberal move on the part of Congress back in 1964. Discrimination is a hard thing. As you see, I'm pretty old, and I began dealing with race, and I moved to gender. Now we have sexual orientation. Now we have sexual identity. All discrimination has one thing in common. It's we, they. We white people are better than people of color. We men are better than women. We love women, but we love them in the kitchen and the nursery and the bedroom. We don't want them in the office. And we straight people are better than gays and lesbians who are different, and transgender people are really different. And that's how we justify the discrimination. But the face of discrimination is ugly. It's no less ugly when it's justified on religious grounds or whatever. It's a never-ending struggle, and it's a struggle that continues for a younger generation. The difference, I think, is that you will find much more support among younger people for equality than a residual older part. That's a good point on which to end, Walter. That's all.